Today we're going to do a teardown of this grinder, the Eureka Oro Single Dose Pro. New for 2025, it's the top-of-the-line model in Eureka Oro's prosumer line of grinders. We're going to go through some of the different components in it. I'll give you my thoughts on how it's assembled. I hope you enjoy this video. Okay, to get us started, we're going to first lift off the lid. It's a solid oak lid, well made, has nice tolerances, fits both on top of this, which is the bellow, as well as directly on top of the hopper that it comes with. Remove the lid, you then have the hopper itself. And as I mentioned in one of my other videos, the hopper has a tendency to rattle when grinding, and that's because it's actually just attached via 4 posts that are just going into open holes in the hopper. You just lift it up to remove it. You can see how the popcorn lid here is designed, has a nice slope to it. These are the standoffs that I mentioned were there. You can see how they have the little clip-ins that hold them in place, and they just rattle because it's just plastic on plastic inside of these 4 holes that actually pierce all the way through the outside, which one of the downsides of this is that it actually does allow some sound to come out around these post holes. And then you can see here the little dose release flipper, how it opens and closes, and basically it's designed to hot start, and so you put the beans in and then you pull this backwards and it drops them into the spinning burrs. Now to remove this, we're going to rotate this around and you're going to see a screw that actually holds the hopper into place. So to remove this screw, just use a standard Phillips. Once you've loosened it, you can actually just lift this off. So now you can see the design of this. This is the hole that aligns to the screw to keep it from coming out. It has a little slot on the side here, which aligns to this little line right here. It does do noise sealing through this rubber gasket, which is removable. Next, we need to remove this piece right here. This is a little Eureka Oro shield, and you remove this by just sliding your fingers underneath it and lifting it off. You can see how it's designed. It has these little clips here that lock into place into the 2 slots in the back of the grinder. You're going to remove this screw entirely. After you've removed that screw, you're going to want to rotate this around and you're going to need to remove the king size dial assembly. Now the king size dial has actually 3 different places where there will be screws that you would need to remove, but with this particular one, it only actually comes with one of these 2 screw holes that actually holds the dial into place. If you buy the king size dial aftermarket, it actually does come with both of these screws that go into the holes on the sides, but with the Single Dose Pro, it actually only comes with 1. So this is a Torx screw hole here, or an Allen wrench. You can use either one. You're gonna have to test to see which one it is. So this one does not have the screw in it. That one does. So we'll rotate this outwards. You can see now that it's coming out to the edge, so we'll stop there. The next thing you'll want to do is remove this screw right here. It's of course a Phillips head screw, so we'll go ahead and unscrew that. Once you pull the screw out, you're able to lift this whole piece right off, and the screw pin that goes in the side just basically locks in around this. And that's also how you go about doing your burr zeroing. Now, you might have noticed that when I took that off, a nut fell out. This guy right here. That goes right into this slot here. So be aware of that. You're going to need to keep track of this guy to put it back in to reassemble the king size dial. Next, we'll take a moment and look at how the top of this comes off. Once you've removed those screws, it's actually a fairly simple step. This is just going to lift off at a slight angle. So let's go ahead and do that now. So you just pick up at the back, kind of wiggle it forward and out. And this is what the lid looks like. It is, as you can tell, made of plastic. This is the back side of that rubber seal that I mentioned was removable. So when you take this out, just a warning, if you take this off, that the screw that we showed earlier, this one right here, uses a nut right there. So if you remove this screw entirely and you pull this out, the nut will fall out. So now you can see the top burr and the whole burr assembly here. So before we get to that, let's go ahead and take out the catch cup. The catch cup has two parts to it. You can see that it has this part which aligns like so to keep chaff from floating around when you're grinding. And then it has this part here, which is the actual cup itself, which has the Eureka logo on it, as well as the ability to actually slide straight into a portafilter basket. It also does have this ring around the bottom. It's a foam rubber ring, and it's designed to sort of hold it in place here on the bottom piece. It's made of oak as well, and it does two things. One, it kind of centers it in this ring here, but the donut also does absorb vibrations. One thing from this grinder, it vibrates a lot, and so if you were to put just a standard metal catch cup on here, it does vibrate around a lot. So this does prevent the vibrations from transferring through to the cup. To remove the oak catch cup base, it's pretty simple. It is just magnetically attached. So you just pull that off. The magnets align there. It's got 4 rubber feet. It also helps somewhat with the vibrations. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the top burr here. So to do this, the first thing that you need to do is remove these 2 screws that actually hold the top burr holder, top burr plate in place. So once you've removed those 2 screws, then you're able to just lift this straight off, like so. You can see this is a blind burr. This is the burr geometry that Eureka calls its Italian taste espresso. So it's more of that, blendier burr that works with medium and dark roasts very well. And this, of course, matches right up to the lower burr, which is not a blind burr. Same exact geometry, as you can tell. So let's just quickly take the burr itself off of the top plate. There are 4 screws here. So this is actually a bit of an unusual mounting design. Other blind burrs typically have 3 that are on the market. So this is a proprietary setup that they've chosen to go with here. Thankfully, they do make aftermarket burrs. They call them black diamond burrs for this grinder. So you just unscrew these 4 screws. And the burr comes out. So you can see this is a diamond inside burr, which what that means is that they do cryo treatment on it to realign the crystalline structure, the crystalline matrix of the metal here in this burr. You see how the burr itself is held in place by this donut of metal. It's actually good tolerances there, holds it in place very nicely. Because there's no O-ring around here between the burr and this plate, sometimes, as you just saw, you will get grinds. They'll get caught and lodged underneath of the burr. Not a problem, but it is notable because that is part of sort of the retention of this grinder. So now if you want to remove the lower burr, you have these 3 screws that you have to remove. For this, you have the Phillips. You'll also need to use another socket of some sort. I'm using this a 7/16 socket on a screwdriver to hold this, keep the burr from spinning. So what you'll do is you'll just align these up, hold this tight. Once all the screws have been loosened, You'll need to use a magnet to get the burr out. It's fairly tight in there. So you can lift out the burr with a magnet like this one. So similar to the other one, this is also a diamond inside burr. Also does not have an O-ring, so there is a potential that you can get grinds in here, although I've seen less of that occur on the bottom burr than on the top burr. Now you can see the grind chamber on this has been sort of evolving over time versus other grinders from Eureka. They've done a better job of tightening up the tolerances. You see that there's not much space around the edge here for grinds to accumulate, so that lowers the overall retention levels of the grinder. So that's good to see. That's a nice evolution of this design. Now you can see the outlet. Right there is where the grinds actually exit. So now we're going to take the base off of the grinder. So to do that, we flip it onto its side. I have already replaced the feet on this, as I noted in my Quiet Your Grinder video. I have hemispherical sorbothane vibration reducing feet on here now. Make a big difference. Check out my video if you haven't seen that yet. And then it has 4 screws right here, 1, 2, and then down these holes here, there's 2 more that hold the base onto the body of the grinder. So you'll need to remove these. You can use a standard Phillips screwdriver to do this, although this particular one that I'm using is a little bit tight. And so I have here a smaller screwdriver, and so this one makes it a little bit easier to open it up. You'll note that these are panhead wood screws. Not sure why they chose to use those for holding aluminum to aluminum, but it's what they chose. So these two come out pretty easily with a fairly standard screwdriver. It's hard to get to these two because there's quite a bit of depth. You'll notice that the base is angled heavily, and so you have a deep channel that has to be, that you have to go down in order to get to the screws. And so you'll need a fairly long screwdriver like this one to access that. So you'll just take and slide your screwdriver down the channel like so. You'll feel it connect with the screw. And just loosen it like that. Once the screws have been loosened, you'll just lift the entire base straight off like this. And of course, then the 2 screws will fall out of the bottom like this. So you'll need to set those with the other 2 that you took out. They're the exact same screws. And now you can see what it looks like inside of the base. You might notice here that there's some coffee grinds that, coffee grounds that have accumulated here. Just the design of the burr chamber here does allow some grounds to fall out and down inside of the body. It's not completely sealed up, so that's why you see those there. And then we have a large capacitor. It's held in place with 2 zip ties. You can see the zip ties actually go underneath of the bottom of the grinder like this. Strange choice to use zip ties to hold the capacitor in place, but it is what it is. And then to continue to disassemble it, you'll need to remove these wires. And the last step to completely remove the base is to take this grounding screw loose. This is the locking washer, so you'll just keep that with the screw so you don't misplace it. They did decide to use a hardwired power cable. Again, odd choice. Most grinders today are using some sort of standard replaceable plug so that you don't have to worry about this. And if something happens to the cable, it's easy to replace. Many of them use the C13 style, which is what is used on, let's say, computers and other appliances. This would be something I'd actually recommend that they improve. So once you've done that, we're going to go back to the top of the grinder. So to open up the chute, there's a few steps you'll need to do. One is that you'll need to take this screw here and remove it. It's what holds the bottom of the chute assembly in place. And then on the top there are two Allen wrenches, hex type of screws. You can also use Torx screwdriver on that. So we'll go ahead and remove those two. So there are the two screws. So then you lift it sort of forwards and outwards like that. Then the next thing you'll need to do is remove this chute cover. And so the easiest way to do that is just pull it off of these two little plastic pins that it has there. You kind of pull it down and around, and it pops off like this. It's made of rubber. And now you have access to the chute itself. The chute has a metal liner that looks like this. And here you see the declumper. So let's remove that. I installed this again into the grinder, even though I typically do not have it in here. I do not like the declumper. I find that what it does cause is retention. I don't find that it declumps anything at all. So my advice to you is remove the declumper, leave it out, and just do RDT. So this is what the declumper looks like. It screws into a little hole here. It has sort of an unusual shape there so that you put it in one particular direction. We'll not be reinstalling that, so I'll put the screw back into place so it doesn't get lost. Then to get the plastic chute off entirely, we have two more screws here. So you'll loosen those up. And with them removed, the chute can be removed. You can see the design of it here. This is apparently the XL sized chute. It does align nicely. If you see this opening shape, it is a good match to this, which is nice to see. That way you don't have retention sort of build up because there's a mismatch in shape. Now we'll go ahead and remove the whole motor assembly so you can see what that looks like. So to get access to the motor, you'll actually just remove these 4 screws. So once these screws are removed, the motor can be lifted straight out. So we'll go ahead and do that. The adjustment assembly is directly attached to the motor, so this will all come out together. So you lift it straight outwards like this. And now you can just see the body of the grinder. So this is what the motor itself looks like. So this is obviously an AC style motor. Is actually directly pressed onto the top grinding chamber. The interesting thing about the design of this is the actual Burr gap adjustment occurs by pushing this plate upwards. And so this is what you see here. When you adjust the dial, the king size dial in this particular one, it rotates and basically screws via, there's actually a screw or a nut assembly here. So as you rotate this, it actually moves this whole bar up and down. And when the bar moves up and down, it then causes this bar on the bottom to also move. And because it's got a hinge over here, what it actually does is you tighten this knob at the top, it actually presses the bottom of the motor axle upwards. So it pushes the whole motor axle and the burr upwards as you twist the dial. So one thing that I've done on mine, just to sort of smooth the mechanism a little bit, is from the factory, this is just metal on metal rubbing. I used some food safe grease, synthetic grease, to put in between these two mating surfaces so we don't have a sort of a high friction area there. Likewise, I also put some right here in between the knob and this surface right here so that it actually does rotate a little bit more smoothly. I noticed that it had some sticking from the factory, and by putting the food safe grease there, it rotates it a lot more smoothly in my experience. Now, another thing of note about the motor is the specs that are on this motor. See, it's 1,650 RPM, and this is what's interesting. It is a 245 watt motor. Not really sure why. That is strange, because the specs that are actually on the website, the published specs that they have on the website and on their catalog documents, etc., all say 320 watts. So not clear why they're putting a 245 watt motor in and calling it 320. But that's what they've done. So this is what the body of the grinder looks like. They have metal supports inside where you can see that there's additional metal to add structure around the sides. And then on the top, they have their, I think they call it their silent technology, but basically what it is it's rubber bushings that the motor attaches to. And those bushings help reduce some of the vibration, reduce, not eliminate, reduce some of the vibration that's generated by the AC motor that they've chosen to use in this. And so that's the entirety of the disassembly process. You can see what the components look like. To put it back together, you just reverse the steps and you've got a functional grinder again. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. Otherwise, please like and subscribe. Thank you.